Hey everyone and welcome. Well, firstly, what can I say? The multi-tiered justice is on show again, it seems. Lockdown is over. If lefties use one man as an excuse to break lockdown, i.e. Dominic Cummings, and we've seen what they've been doing with that, well, we have thousands of protesters to enable us, don't we? If one is allowed, all are allowed, in my opinion, is all I'm saying. Anyway, let's get on to the video. This one is about another absolute hypocrite. We seem to be coming out the woodwork, these people, don't they? Prospective leader and perpetual virtue signaller of the Lib Dems Swamp Fraggles, Ed Daceys, and his attempt to scupper a US trade deal. It's titled, Boris Johnson must call out Donald Trump for police brutality towards protesters and journalists, acting Lib Dem leader says. Ed Daceys kicks off leadership campaign with call for PM to stand up for fundamental democratic values. Yep, you heard it right. A Moaner wanting fundamental democratic values to be stood up for. This man doesn't seem to understand democracy. He ignored losers' consent, did he not, after the referendum? Effectively breaking our democracy. He also fasted for Ramadan without being a follower of Islamic teachings, completely missing the entire point of the fast. So he's a buffoon too. This man will say and do anything he can for his own benefit and doesn't care who he annoys in the process. Now, before we read the article, I'd like to say everyone called out the cop for George. Trump does not control the cops in Democrat states. The state police are controlled by Tim Walz, who's the Democrat governor, and the county police are controlled by Jacob Frey, who is the Democrat mayor. So to blame Trump would be inaccurate, would it not? But let's read. Boris Johnson must call out Donald Trump publicly for the police brutality towards protesters and journalists reporting on demonstrations over the death of George Floyd. Acting Lib undemocrat leader Ed Daceys has said. Hypocrite, isn't he? He is an absolute hypocrite. He knows it's not Trump. Trump has already come out and said it was disgusting, has he not? He's already put things in motion to convict the cops. He knows this, so he's just using it to attack Trump. Why? This is just the left attacking the right for no reason other than they've got an excuse now, is it not? In a letter to the Prime Minister, Davey said Johnson's unwillingness to speak truth to power exposed the current imbalance in the UK's historic special relationship with the US. Now at this point, I'd like to state he wants it to be done publicly, so this isn't just speaking truth to power, is it? This is him wanting our Prime Minister to verbally attack their president. How is this not scuppering a future trade deal with the US? It would be, wouldn't it? Speaking to The Independent shortly after formally launching his bid to take the leadership role on a permanent basis, see what I mean about him being greedy? He said the PM's mishandling of the trade talks with the EU had left him pinned in a corner. Oh! Sorry, I won't do that again. I'm desperate not to fall out with Trump. While Mr. Johnson has said he was appalled by the killing of Floyd, and the UK Embassy in Washington has discreetly raised the issue of British journalists being impeded by police from covering protests, the PM is yet to speak out against the US president's incendiary and heavy-handed response. Now, that's a personal opinion, isn't it? He thinks it's heavy-handed. Does everybody else? Let me know if you think what Trump has done so far in regards to these riots, because that's what they are, and looting escapades, and with quite a lot of murder thrown in, I might add. Do we think that he's been heavy-handed? Do we think he's been incendiary? I'd like to know your opinions on that one, everyone. In his letter, Davey said, if this series of events were happening in any other country, UK government would not only be calling out such behaviour, it would be using diplomatic channels and international pressure to stop this violence. It's not the police that are just doing the violence though, is it, Ed Daceys? How about you call out both sides? You notice the silence? Yeah, exactly. Both protesters and journalists have had their freedoms curtailed by an administration led by a president who has been using his high office as a bully pulpit, inciting more violence. We could say the same about our country, could we not? Because of people like you, Ed, that have been screaming about locking us down so much because, you know, we might die, and think of the NHS while they're doing TikTok dances. You understand what I'm saying with that? They were our freedoms. You were the first one screaming from the rooftops, let's take more of their freedoms, and yet you want freedoms to be exacted in other countries. You see why I think these people are just total hypocrites, and they haven't got the brains to realise that they just contradict themselves in every other passage. Is that not true? Idiots. And he told Johnson, you have spoken previously of your pride in Britain's place in the world, but that pride means nothing if we are not willing to stand up when we see fundamental democratic values being infringed. Oh, now you want to stand up for the world. Have we not heard this one before? Let's stand up for the world. You not think that this is really creepy to want to intervene on everything? This is the problem with the left. They want to have their fingers in every single pie and then blame everybody else when it doesn't go right, especially coming from one of our closest allies. Davey said the failure to hold Trump to account was part of a pattern of behaviour in which Brexit hotheads in government, Jesus, led by Mr Johnson and his under-fire aide Dominic Cummings, were forced to curry favour with the US president on issues like ditching the ban on imports of chlorine-washed chicken. You know, I'm really getting sick of this chlorine-washed chicken malarkey. This is absolute codswallop, is it not? We wash our vegetables and salad in chlorine, just like they wash the chicken in chlorine. Nothing said about the salad though, is it? Nothing whatsoever, because of their determination to cut the UK's ties with Europe. Johnson has pinned himself into a corner over the deal with the European Union. No, he hasn't. No, he has not, Ed. You know what he has done? He's made it so that he can get away and then blame the European Union for it. And you hate it, don't you? Ooh, you do. Am I wrong? Let me know. By doing that, he is going to lose out for Britain, and therefore be even more desperate for trade deals elsewhere and pay too high a price to get deals that aren't good enough. That's a very poor position for any Prime Minister. No, I think if you were ever in a position of power and it was you making the decisions, that whole comment there dictates that you are incapable of doing any deal for our benefit. If you think before you even go into the deal that you will lose the deal, guess what? Ed Daceys, you'll lose the deal. Obviously, you've never had a business, have you? And if you have, it can't have been doing very well. While insisting he did not want to simply reopen the old battles over Brexit, yeah, alright, Davey said that the social and economic disruption of the lurgy outbreak made it common sense for Britain to seek the longest possible extension. And here we have the rub, isn't it? This is what it's all about. He wants to force us to have a go at the USA to the extent where the USA say to us, we're not doing a deal with you over trade anymore, you can sod off. So that he can then say, we can only go to the EU now then, we need the EU's trade. Absolutely disgusting to use another problem in the country for benefit, is it not? To the transition out of the EU in order to forge the closest possible relationship with its former partners. Instead, some around Mr Johnson appeared to be hoping to smuggle a no-deal outcome through under the cloak of the lurgy crisis. No, I don't think he's trying to smuggle it, he's doing it out in the open, and that's why you're getting so desperate, is it not, chappy? In the reckless and irresponsible hope that the economic damage inflicted by new trade barriers will be hidden by the impact of the virus, he said. Voters increasingly alarmed by the impact of lurgy on jobs and livelihoods need to see the government prioritising maintaining trade links with Europe rather than chasing the tiny gains on offer from a US deal. Tiny? Are you insane? Wow, and he's got no idea of the economy either, has he? Or GDP, or industry, or markets. Wow. Wow. And he said Chancellor Rishi Sunak's unexpected emergency budget in July should deliver a radical shift in focus towards economic recovery based on decarbonising capitalism. A green recovery plan would pump money into jobs-rich programmes like home insulation to supply a quick boost to jobs and economic activity. And here we go. Do you not think that the Lib Dems have never got a policy of their own? They seem to like to steal other people's, don't they? Do you think it's just because they haven't got a brain cell between them? Because I'm starting to think it is. Because this is Green New Deal. Does that not sound familiar? AOC special. He wants to be American. I'll tell you, Ed, here's one for you. Sir Ed, piss off to America. But should also encompass fundamental reforms to the financial sector to make London the green financial capital of the world. What does that even mean? Knock all the buildings down and make everyone live in a field? If they try to do it by simply changing spending allocations, that won't be enough. They need to go deeper and look at the rules of the game for private capital. I would actually say we need to have a look more into it. I think it needs at least 10 years research into environment before we can even contemplate having a discussion on it. But what say you? It must signal that this is a massive movement of transition, not a major tweak of expenditures. It's got to be big if it's going to respond to the biggest crisis our economy has seen since probably the Second World War. It's just bullet point crap, isn't it, this? Davey's focus on green issues and on what he terms a caring revolution is an exact steal off the Green Party and the Democrats in America. Woo! Ooh, they're amazing, aren't they? Is an indication on his belief that after their disastrous performance on a revoked Brexit platform in December's general election, disastrous, they went down to 11 seats. The Lib Dems need to shake off the image of a single-issue party obsessed only with Europe. And yet you're still doing it, are you not? We haven't, as a party, in my view, connected in recent years with some of the concerns of the voters, he said. We need to talk about those mainstream issues. Central to this is his promise to raise the status of millions of people doing unpaid caring work, which he says is informed by his own experience of caring for his terminally ill mother and then arranging domiciliary care for his grandmother as a teenager, and raising with wife Emily their son John, who has undiagnosed condition leaves him unable to walk, talk or dress himself at the age of 12. Poor lad. In policy terms, this includes a commitment to a citizen's basic income to ensure that those unable to work due to caring responsibilities, or the homeless, or those without secure accommodation do not fall below a minimum level of support. That's what the social's for. While declining to put a figure on the payment, he said he anticipates something closer to £100 a week than the current carer's allowance of £67. Now, in that regards, I do agree with that. £67 is not enough for a carer. I mean, we're talking for like family members that have had to give up work to look after a loved one. £100 a week, I think, is a much better figure. Where you would get that extra money from is a different matter. I'm not an economist, so I wouldn't know where we could eke that from, but there must be somewhere. I'm thinking maybe cut back on the NHS's massive spending for no reason. That might be a claw some of that money back. What do you think, everyone? In a leadership election in which the 54-year-old former cabinet minister and MP of 23 years standing is by far more experienced than rivals Layla Moran, she's a nutjob, and Vera Hobhouse, who both entered Parliament in 2017. Davey is hoping that these sort of ideas will help overcome arguments that the party needs a new direction under a leader who is not tainted by coalition with the Tories. I'm the fresh start, he said. I'm the one talking about new ideas like a caring revolution. That's fresh, that's new, that's different. That's everybody else's idea though, is it not? His stint as Energy Secretary in David Cameron's coalition cabinet from 2012 to 15 should bolster, not undermine, his anti-Tory credentials, he suggested. I'm an anti-conservative politician. If that's what you think makes you special, you've got another thing coming. Just because you don't like someone doesn't make you a better person, does it? I fought the Conservatives all my life. Goody for you. In government and out of government, and I would take on the Tories as leader. How come it's just the Tories? So what you're saying there is, if Labour got in, you wouldn't take them on at all. You'd just toe the line, would you, Ed? Lib Dems, if there's any Lib Dems listening, I'm sure there isn't, but if there is, and you're here to troll or anything like that, I would pay heed to that. That's him effectively saying, if you don't win and the Tories don't win, they'll do as they told. That's not what a party should be, is it? I've always been a centre-left politician and progressive politician. For me, it's a party's natural home is on the centre-left. Centre-left? These aren't centre-left, are they? He sidestepped the perennial question for all would-be Lib Dem leaders on whether he would plump for Johnson's Tories or Keir Starmer's Labour if he held the balance of power after an election. But his preference for Starmer was plain, as he credited him for putting Johnson on the back foot. Really? Has he really? I notice he's not actually done anything though, and recalled his offer of cooperation with the new Labour leader in holding the government to account. Davey has previously said that the Lib Dems suffered during Jeremy Corbyn's time at the Labour helm from voters feeling they had to back Tories to keep the hard left out, and he insisted that he does not expect an electoral squeeze from Starmer competing for the same centrist voters, saying it was important that the leader of the opposition was someone who could be credible Prime Minister. But for now, his sights are set on the postal ballot of party supporters, which opens on the 30th of July, with the new leader to be named on the 26th of August. Now, what are my opinions on this? I think it's absolutely disgraceful that they're still doing the same rubbish, aren't they? Any excuse to get the deal with America and the UK scuppered. Now, we all know and we all feel the same that poor guy did not deserve to be killed as he was, but that does not excuse it to be used to attack an entire country, should it? Which is exactly what Davey wants our Prime Minister to do. He wants to attack Trump and in the process attack the entire country. That would scupper any trade deal, and then he could actually say, well, the only people we can deal with now to get our economy back up and get our jobs back is the EU. You see where it becomes a little bit snaky, a little bit reptile-y. Now, I'd like to know your opinions on this, though, everyone. I mean, am I reading it wrong? Do you think I'm reading it right? Do you think this is just another way for the Lib Dems to try and stay relevant with any means necessary? Because it does seem that way, doesn't it? If you're new to the channel, don't forget to hit the like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell icon, share it out, everyone, and I'll see you on the next one.